Elden Ring is a game about a four-handed witch giving you a tug. So today, I wondered if it was possible to beat Elden Ring as Chill Bill. The rules are simple. Our main source of damage must be a cold tutorial weapon. We cannot use anything other than these tutorial weapons and our fists. And to make this a real challenge, I also had to beat the full 60-hour game in under 14 hours. But first, why don't you subscribe to help me gain more subscribers than the IRS? Firstly, I must mention I am by no means a Souls god, but for this challenge I was willing to take all the punishment necessary to please Bill. We start Elden Ring by picking the samurai as our class and crafting our lord and saviour himself before running down and getting touched by the grafted scion. In the tutorial, Bill could either fight the soldier of Godrick or skip him. Naturally, I chose to skip him, but Bill fell down the hole anyway, so we had to rush to the soldier and give him a good old 15-minute fisting session. After finally exiting the tutorial area and seeing Limgrave in all its glory, it was a priority to get an Ash of War to imbue our weapon, but first we had some tasks to cross off the list. We first picked up a maiden who gave us a new Honda Accord called Torrent, and Bill met somebody who would soon become the love of his life, a witch named Ranni, who gave us the summoning bell. Sadly, this meeting didn't last long and she ran off, breaking Bill's heart. So, to make Bill feel better about his loss, we ran straight to Liurnia through Stormvale's side path and got invited to the Round Table Hold, right after Bill's maiden saw his monster dong. After some more yapping, we ran through Liurnia and picked up the Hoarfrost Stomp Ash of War, allowing us to finally use our weapon and play the game. With setup done, I knew we had to grind for runes to stand a chance against the first major boss. So, after roleplaying as a Minecraft YouTuber through an area with miners, we beat a troll, upgraded our katana to +4, picked up the Radahn seal, half the medallion, beat a couple more bosses, and grabbed the other half of the medallion. With enough power to make Farage himself jizz, we headed straight to Margit the Fell. Margit will always be an interesting boss who loves to delay his attacks, but thanks to mine and Bill's collective power, we took down Margit on our first try. This gave me some hope for this run, and it actually made me think I wasn't god-awful at this game, but sadly, that hope would eventually be shattered. After beating Margit, I still thought I needed more runes, so I made the executive decision to go to Caelid and slice up a sleeping dragon for 10 minutes straight. Before the dragon died, he decided he was going to pump Bill full of his substance, otherwise known as runes, which gave us the power to get Bill as close to 60 vigour as possible. With my newfound confidence, I sprinted through Stormvale and went straight to Godrick, ignoring every single NPC along the way. This fight was laughably easy. It must have been humiliating for Godrick, but then something unthinkable happened. He cut his arm off mid-fight for some twisted sexual gratification. Bill, seeing how far this pervert had fallen, knew he had to go, and so we finished the fight on our first try without any hassle. After putting away many of his perverted thoughts, Bill went to activate Godrick's Great Rune, giving us an extra 5 points in every stat at the cost of an ember. With the rune activated and Bill more powerful than ever, we realised we wanted our weapon to match that power, and so we headed into Liurnia's mines, beat a boss, and got the first miner's bell bearing, giving us the ability to upgrade our weapons. With Bill's potential unlocked further, he saw a castle in the distance. He didn't know why, but he felt as if he was being called there. So he hopped on his Honda Accord and drove all the way up to the front gate before venturing through, sprinting past every single enemy along the way. At the end of this castle, he encountered Loretta. I thought Loretta would pose a bit more of a challenge on this run due to them being immune to frostbite. However, Bill, being the big brute that he is, had absolutely zero issues with dispatching her. With Loretta out the way, Bill saw a tower in the distance, and upon arriving, he met somebody whom he thought he would never see again. It was the witch Ranni. She asked Bill to enter into her service, and Bill accepted without giving it a second thought. He was madly in love with her, and he would do whatever it took to make her happy. It was here that the witch gave Bill the title of Chill Bill, and his first task was to slay the dragon outside and find the hidden city of Armpit underground. And so, Bill did just that. He instantly went and fought the dragon outside, who puttied out halfway through the fight, and then we headed to the Armpit River underground and fought a moose. This fight wasn't all that tough, but the moose I'd have to fight later would make me want to overthrow the government. Once we fought moose number 1, Bill learns from a few random geezers that to get to the city of Armpits we had to fight Starscourge Radahn. At this point, I knew I was underleveled for Radahn, so in order to level up, I attempted to take out a dragon. But when I was fighting it, I realised it was almost like a dragon had infinite wealth. Realising that fighting dragons was almost certainly a lost cause, I just decided to head straight to Redmane Castle and start Radahn's festival. Now, Bill was no stranger to festivals, and he saw this one as an excuse to take as many substances as possible before going to face Radahn himself. Radahn was a much easier fight than I anticipated, with him going down on me within just a few minutes, thanks to the help of our summons and our chilling mist ash of war, which I cannot remember picking up. With Radahn defeated, big fuck-off rocks fell from the sky, giving us access to Armpit Land. But before we moved forward, we put all of our runes into Vigour, allowing us to reach 60 Vigour as long as we had all of our buffs applied. We were currently at the 3-hour mark, so we had to pick up the pace a little bit, but Chill Bill was still desperate to please Ranni, so he headed to Armpit Land where we ran past all of the enemies to the first fight, the Mimic tier. Our strategy for this fight was simple. Bill would unequip then re-equip his weapons before going to Pound Town on himself. This made the fight nothing short of child's play, allowing Bill to venture further into Armpit Land. And in Armpit Land, we quickly learned that there was another moose boss. This boss was one of the first ones that thoroughly pissed me off. This stupid prick of a boss decided to pull out his signature fuck you move, allowing himself to heal to full health multiple times in the fight. This move made this fight one of the longest ones in this run, but in the end I did manage to beat him on my first attempt. It was just a monotonous ball ache, and it made me start to realise I needed more damage. Regardless, this revelation didn't stop me from trying to fight the 2 gargoyles and getting my balls licked instantly. Knowing I was starting to border on being underleveled, I decided to rush into Armpit City, grab the Mimic tier who would be invaluable in my run, and grab the item Ranni wanted so badly. With this, she would be sure to marry Chill Bill. With Ranni's item in tow, Bill returned to Ranni and handed it over, but instead of asking Bill to marry her on the spot, she said thank you and just disappeared. This troubled Bill. He was once again left alone, and to clear his head, he headed to Renna's Rise next door, gaining some new drip and then teleported away to a new area where he picked up a doll of his crush. Before Bill could become too perverted with the doll, he decided to talk to it, and to his surprise it actually responded. But it wasn't in the way he expected. The doll humiliated and dominated Bill, which he actually enjoyed. So he went to fulfill its every wish and take out a shadow. As Bill ventured through this area, he picked up a Spirit Ash bell bearing and got his ass kicked by the shadow. This would not do. It was time for Bill to gain more power, and so he went to get a Sight of Grace at the Atlas Plateau and pick up the item that would double his power. He went to get a second uchigatana in a cave in Limgrave, which he then imbued with cold. With a second weapon, Bill then went back to the Atlas Plateau, picked up as many gold seeds as possible, and smacked a boatman for the runes to upgrade his new weapon. Sadly, even this wasn't enough, and we had to go and fight something bigger to get the runes for upgrades. Naturally, we went to scrap a dragon. However, it was at this point that I encountered the biggest issue of this challenge. I was sitting at around the 6-hour mark and I hadn't even entered the second major dungeon. I was running out of time, and to make it worse, my controller kept disconnecting. Apparently, this was due to a firmware update I was unaware of, but instead of boring you with how I fixed it, we're all just going to have mass psychosis and pretend I beat this game with a USB steering wheel. Sadly, one of the times when my controller disconnected was when I was fighting this dragon, as the game decided I had had enough of playing the game, and the dragon ate my ass. When I finally connected my new controller, we killed the dragon for some runes, leveled our weapons, killed an Erdtree avatar for some more upgrades, and attempted to fight another dragon. But it turns out this one also had infinite wealth, so we decided to just go back and fight the shadow, which we actually managed to beat after a few more attempts. Ranni was pleased with our performance, and once again abandoned Bill. He thought she would propose to him for sure, but he was once again left distraught and trapped venturing through the Lake of Rot. At the end of this area, one of the hardest bosses of this challenge awaited me. It was Astrobot, who instantly kicked my ass. I knew I would get nowhere with my current level and setup, so I just decided to come back for him later. It was finally time to enter Raya Lucaria, so we sprinted past every enemy, killed Sif in 15 seconds, and ran to the end of the academy where we encountered Renala, who had her dogs out. Chill Bill, being the big pervert that he is, found this lady deeply attractive, but as he melted her health bar, he came to a realisation. Renala was Ranni's mother, and he was actually fighting a spell left by Ranni. Bill took took gratification from this, but unfortunately, Bill finished too quick and the fight was over. With Raya Lucaria completed, we grabbed a quest item and put one level into endurance. Our next main target was Godfrey's ghost in the capital, but first we had to do some more prep work by eliminating some easy bosses in the open world. Our first stop was the 2 tree sentinels in the Atlas Plateau, who kindly let me pound them one at a time while the other one watched before getting the same treatment. The next boss we encountered was the Falling Star Beast, who was much harder, but he was still nothing that Bill and I couldn't handle. With more runes acquired, I thought Bill was the right level to take on Astrobot, but after arriving, I realised it was still fruitless and we needed even more power, so we went to the Foreskin Apostle, took him down, before taking down Wormface and Bleedy Nobleboy. At this point, the rune returns were getting rather low, so I decided it was time to hunt some dragons. We took down this fat dragon who gave us a solid 60,000 runes, and this random Black Knife assassin who wasn't worth the bull sweat it took to kill. With more levels gathered, we continued onwards towards the capital, taking out the Draconic Tree Sentinel without any issue. It was around this time I realised Bill was taking a little bit too much damage for my liking, so I decided he once again needed some new drip. With Bill having a dex build, I took the only natural choice of armour by taking the Dung Eater's key and killing him in his cell. With the Arsenal +1 talisman, I was able to wear the Dung Eater's chest piece, which gave me just that little bit extra survivability. With all the pain and suffering you could possibly imagine, Bill continued on to the next main boss, Godfrey's ghost, who was just laughably easy. Now we had to go and face Morgott, a boss who many considers to be one of the hardest in the game, but funnily enough, he has never actually caused me any problems in any playthrough. I've always found him to be a bit of a pushover, so naturally, Bill licked his horns and sent Morgott on his way. After all this time, Bill was finally at the foot of the Erd Tree. Being here, he wondered if it was enough to make Ranni fall for him, but as he attempted to enter the Elden's ring, he was stopped by a giant piece of wood piercing him. He knew this wood couldn't keep penetrating him, and so Bill and his maiden headed up to the Mountaintop of the Giants, where they immediately ran into somebody who asked Bill to betray Ranni. Bill couldn't do that though, so he took the most reasonable approach and killed the fucker for even suggesting it, giving him a new sick armour set. Being at the top of the mountain, we picked up another bell end to upgrade my weapons further, and Zaymor's Ice Storm, which I heard was amazing. Sadly, Bill couldn't use this Ash of War as it would not work with his tutorial weapons, and we were stuck with our normal Ashes of War. This area of the game is where things started to turn from a walk in the park to a sprint through the fires of hell while Satan was trying to suck your toes. Everything in this area did insane damage to me, and even as I attempted to get runes to level up, I was either 1 or 2 hit by everything, including Aurora Borealis himself. This made it clear as day that Bill was only a small man, and he needed even more power, and so we collected upgrades to get our Mimic tier to +10 and decided it was time to respec. Since the start of the game, I've only really been leveling dexterity, but I seem to have forgot that our weapon also scales with intelligence. After respecking our skill points to provide even more of a split between intelligence and dexterity, we ventured back out to the mountaintop where we tested our newfound power on the Lord Contender's Everjail. This fight proved to me that something was working. Bill was slowly becoming more and more powerful, and he made Vike lick that long nose of his. After using as many runes as I could get my hands on to level up my weapons, it was time to fight Bill's first true challenge, the Fire Giant. The Fire Giant had such an immense health pool. Usually, it would take an eternity to bring him down, but since Bill is just so chill, he had one aim, and it was to freeze him. Every time he gave the giant frostbite or bleed from his katanas, he took away a chunk of his health, making this fight far shorter than it usually is, allowing us to beat it on our very first try. With the Fire Giant out the way, we could finally set the giant wooden D ablaze. With the tree burnt, we have entered Farm Azala at around the 11-hour mark. We had to act, and we had to do it fast, so we sprinted through this endgame area, took out a giant dragon for its smithing stone, and acquired some more runes for the final few fights. With Bill as ready as he'd ever be, it was time to enter the Foreskin and Smo fight. Now, I want to go on the record and say I fucking hate these two with every fibre of my being, especially the chunky motherfucker. Bill died countless times in this fight, and even when he took them both out, we had the privilege of waiting 30 seconds until they respawned and ultimately killed me again. Turns out, this fight is based on their collective health pool and not each individual one. In the end, I got so pissed off I had to pause the game, and so I went off to Prezzo for a 99p pizza and a pint. But when I tasted that sweet nectar, something magical happened. It imbued my real life self with the power of Chill Bill. So when I got home, I went back to the foreskin duo and beat the ever-living fuck out of them. Remember chat, alcohol isn't the problem, it's the solution. Killing those two tossers gave me the final bell end I needed to upgrade my weapon to the max. And so, with this newfound confidence, Bill went back to take down Astrobot, and this time, it worked. With Astrobot down, Bill went to a nearby church, finished off that bitch-ass dragon who ran away from an earlier fight, and he found the love of his life once more. She was waiting for Bill to pop the question, and as Bill asked her, she said she was impressed with the size of Bill's nose, and she would gladly marry him if he became Elden Lord. As Bill gave her the ring to cement the engagement, he was left with one task: finish the game and become Elden Lord. Bill was more invigorated than ever, and so he went back to farm Azula in hopes of gaining more power by taking down Dragon Lord Ballsacks. This did not work. Electing to ignore the Dragon Lord, we decided it would be a wiser choice to go take down this random Draconic Tree Sentinel, who whooped my ass. At this moment, I thought Bill was still somehow too underleveled, but we were running out of time. We needed runes and we needed them fast. Here I realised there was still an easy great rune I had yet to obtain: Rykart's. After offing another Falling Star Beast and making it to Volcano Manor, we realised we had a few contracts we had to do before seeing Rykart. These contracts went as follows. The first one sucked it, the second one sucked it, and Bill sucked the third one before the third one sucked it. With all these contracts out the way, we were able to go and meet Rykart, who was a giant snake. Usually, you would pick up the serpent slaying sword for this fight, but instead, I elected to rush him with my meaty mimic tier. With Rykart being in a pit of lava, it was a slight pain in the ass, but in the end, we slapped this snake until it was solid. With more levels obtained, we once again headed to Farm Azula, but instead of fighting the Draconic Tree Sentinel, I elected to just run right past him to Malekith. Malekith is supposedly one of the hardest fights in this game, but thanks to mine and Bill's collective skill, we managed to get our asses handed to us. This struck the fear of God into me. I've never struggled with Malekith before. Will this time make me understand why people find him so hard? Well, no, because on my second attempt, I came up with a revolutionary strategy. I hid behind a pillar and tickled Malekith until he died. With Malekith dead, we can finally move on to the final bosses of Elden Ring in the Ashen Capital. But as we went up a lift and moved towards the burning tree, we encountered Gideon. Bill had never met this man before and had no idea why he was being so theatrical. But as they fought, it gave me a flashback. You see, when I was in school, we had a teacher called Gideon, and it turned out he liked them young. This memory gave me the power to send Mr. Gideon back to the prison where he belongs, giving us access to the final bosses. But first, we got Bill's katanas to plus 24 and plus 25 before fighting Godfrey himself, whose grammar is somehow worse than mine. I thought this fight would be a bit easier than it was, but the first phase wasn't so bad. But as soon as we entered the second, the man turned into a Yakuza villain and body slammed Bill into oblivion. In the end, we managed to best him on our third attempt by unequipping Radagon's seal and just using Godrick's Great Rune instead to give us some better damage absorption. With the penultimate boss out the way, it was finally time to take on the Elden Ring, but it turns out the Elden Ring was actually a ginger man. This ginger had been ridiculed all of his life for the colour of his hair, and so he decided to take it out on Bill. This was yet another fight that took 3 attempts, and Bill had to watch in horror as his mimic got beaten to a pulp. This gave Bill flashbacks of his father with a belt. Seeing this, Bill vowed to be better than his dad, and so he beat Radagon down, who became the true final boss, the Elden Cock Ring. With the help of his loyal Honda Accord, the ring stood no chance, and after a long, hard-fought battle, Bill bested him on his first attempt. However, Bill's journey wasn't over just yet. He called down his soon-to-be wife to cast a spell, turning the lands between into the backyard from Plants vs Zombies. Bill then took his wife's hand, joining her in ruling. During their lifetime, they had 2 kids, Chill Bill Jr. and Manic William, and for years they all lived a happy life together until the Great Seal Migration. But that's a story for another day. And in the end, we beat Elden Ring at level 110 in just under 13 hours. Chat, if you think Elden Ring is hard, just remember, it's not as hard as Chill Bill.